Hey guys, what's up? It is the one and only RJ21 here, and today I'm going to be recapping the events of Week 8 of Big Brother Canada 12 and giving my updated power rankings. Week 8 starts off with the Nepo Babies HOH competition, basically quizzing the house guests on all of the previously evicted house guests, playing a clip of one of the evicted house guests' speech, but changing the audio to essentially make them sound like a baby, which was honestly pretty funny to listen to. And it was also really nice to just see clips of the previously evicted house guests. Ultimately, the quiz comp comes down to Anthony and Bayleigh going to a tiebreaker, with Anthony winning the HOH competition, winning his second HOH competition of the entire season. Now, Anthony has one goal in mind and one target in mind: Victoria. Because Anthony has been starting to see how Victoria has been moving in this game and been making actions against him in this game, with Victoria making moves such as the mat blindside and the taking out Tola in the double eviction, making these moves that are not good for his game. However, Anthony needs to lay out the groundwork in order to take out such a big player that is so well connected in Victoria. So Anthony gets to work. Anthony first goes to Bayleigh and tells Bayleigh about Victoria's disloyalty to her, telling her how she prioritized Avery over Bayleigh, and tells Bayleigh about the initial plan, about how he wants to initially put up Bayleigh and Todd, with one of them coming down, particularly Bayleigh, but he wants one of the two of them to come down so Victoria would go up and Victoria would go home. However, Bayleigh does not want this plan to happen because she does not want to go up on the block and risk going home, as she really thinks that if Anthony believes that Bayleigh is her number one, as Anthony has been claiming, Anthony would not put her up on the block. So Anthony realizes that he needs more information to weaponize against Victoria. So Anthony takes Victoria to Wendy's, prying more information out of Victoria to gain more and more information so he can later weaponize it against her. Anthony then goes to Todd and tells him everything Victoria has been saying about him. Even everything that was said in the Wendy's conversation, Anthony tells Todd, further turning Todd against Victoria. Anthony then goes to Lexus to try and convince Lexus to go up on the block as a pawn to preserve his relationship with Bayleigh. And Lexus obliges, as she is willing to do whatever it takes in order to take Victoria out. Anthony then reroutes back to Bayleigh and tells her how the plan has changed and how he was able to get Lexus to volunteer to go up on the block because he wants to protect his relationship with Bayleigh, solidifying Bayleigh's trust and acting as the final nail in the coffin in Victoria's game. So, at the nomination ceremony, Anthony nominates Todd and Lexus, with Victoria being the backdoor target, even though it's not actually a backdoor because she could play in the veto, but that's besides the point. It seems like when a replacement nominee is just equivalent to a backdoor in the modern Big Brother vernacular, so who really cares? Victoria is blissfully unaware of the true plans, gloating to the cameras how she's safe and how she's going to make it to the end of this game and she's going to win, while literally in the other rooms, all the other house guests, particularly Lexus, Bayleigh, and Todd, are all sharing information about all of the things Victoria has been done, revealing how Victoria has been sneak dissing them behind their backs, upsetting them even more and turning them even more against Victoria. Because it's the final five, everybody gets to compete in the Power Veto competition, which is sponsored by Socialite. The competition is comprised of multiple stages. The first stage is stacking a bunch of ice cubes on an unbalanced platform. After they do that, they have to land 3 strawberries, which are essentially just beanbags, on a small little platform, and then house guests have to balance a ball across a lime and land it in a pocket. Once the house guests finish all stages of the course, the house guests will be faced with a big pipe maze at the end, where they have to identify which pipes correspond to the correct cup. And then once they are able to identify that, they have to pour and tip their can. If they choose the right one and it leaks into the Power Veto glass, then they win it. But if they pour it into the wrong glass, they have to complete all 3 stages over again before having another chance. Now, this competition is pretty difficult. I mean, it took a substantial amount of time for anybody to even get their first attempt in. But by the end of it, Todd ends up winning the Power Veto, winning his 3rd Power Veto in a row. Everyone, except for Victoria, is absolutely elated that Todd won the veto. I mean, Anthony is in the HOH room going Super Saiyan, while Lexus, Bayleigh, and Todd are in the storage room jumping up and down and celebrating how they're going to be making it to the Final Four, sealing Victoria's fate as she has to face her impending doom. However, just 1 hour before the veto ceremony, Victoria is picking up on suspicious vibes from Bayleigh, considering how she's a little bit too relaxed. So she goes to Anthony and tries talking to him about who the replacement nominee is going to be. And she ultimately comes to the conclusion that she could possibly be going up as the replacement nominee. So Victoria and Anthony have a conversation in the backyard where Anthony essentially tells her all of the reasons why he is going to be putting her up and targeting her, while Victoria is pleading for her life. She is trying to deny all of these claims, and she is pledging her undying loyalty to Anthony to prove that she was never against him in this game and how she was willing to die for him and is willing to go to the final two with him. The conversation eventually travels to the backyard, where Victoria is tearfully pleading for her life in this game, essentially begging Anthony to keep her and to not make this move. It honestly felt like watching a breakup with like the cinematography and the overall ambiance of the situation. It honestly felt like a scene straight out of a movie, especially with like the symbolism of how they're on opposite ends and Victoria sitting in the fireplace and how she's the one who's in the hot seat right now. Like, honestly, it felt like such good drama and such good television. Unfortunately, Victoria's pleas fell on deaf ears, as at the veto ceremony, Todd uses the power of veto on himself, and while Victoria tries to convince Anthony one last time that she shouldn't be the one who's put up as the replacement nominee, Anthony names Victoria as the replacement nominee, sealing her fate in this game. Victoria has numerous conversations with Anthony to try and convince him that he is making the wrong move, but this information is being overheard by all of the house guests, so any chances of the votes themselves falling in her favor are slim to none at this point. Victoria tries pleading her case to Anthony one final time in the HOH room, telling him how she has always had his back in this game and has always been trying to make moves to preserve both of their safeties in this game. Unfortunately, Anthony is not budging and continues listing off the reasons as to why he is going to target Victoria and why Victoria is going to be going home, listing how Victoria has been disloyal and has been making actions to essentially soil his game indirectly, setting people up to target him so Victoria doesn't have to target him herself. And this upsets Victoria as she storms out of the HOH room, smashes glasses on the way out, and causes a huge fight to erupt in the middle of the house, with both of them screaming at each other at the top of the staircase. Unfortunately, while Victoria was able to pick up and clean the pieces of glass that she shattered, she unfortunately couldn't pick up the pieces of her game to salvage. So, come eviction night, Victoria is evicted in a unanimous 2-0 vote, officially becoming the 11th house guest to be evicted from the Big Brother Canada 12 house and the 5th member of the jury. Now it's time to get into the power rankings. At number 5, the most recently evicted house guest, we have Victoria. And seeing her downfall throughout this entire week was honestly like watching a movie. Like, just seeing the build-up and how Victoria realizes that she's the target and tries fighting tooth and nail to try and stay in this game, but for it all to fail in the end, it was honestly like cinematic watching the entire experience go down. And what else can you expect from Victoria? I mean, she is absolutely great television. She is such an entertaining character, and she brings such an unbridled sense of chaos to the game of Big Brother that how could you not enjoy watching her? Like, she is such an amazing reality television character. I don't think I can emphasize that enough, how entertaining she is to watch. However, in terms of this game, it definitely feels like she was trying to overcorrect for the mistakes that she made on her first season. Her biggest issue on her original season was not pledging her loyalties to nearly anybody, letting herself be viewed as a wild card in this game, and that honestly sunk her chances. So on this season, it seems like she really, and I mean really, worked hard on solidifying all of these alliances and these bonds and these connections that would keep her safe. And for the most part, it did. But unfortunately, it all came back to her as everybody started talking. Everybody started realizing that Victoria was having the same conversations, just with different people and switching people out, showing that Victoria has been disloyal to nearly everybody in this game. I will say Victoria does have the privilege of being able to say that I never turned on Dougie because I won 3 HOHs and I never put him up. However, we did see throughout the season that Victoria was planting the seeds of doubt in people's mind that Anthony is a big threat and does need to be taken out by the end game. So there definitely is that to be held. However, I completely understand why Victoria feels so betrayed by him. I mean, they came into the house as the final two house guests, and they were expecting to leave the house as the final two house guests. So it must suck for Victoria. For the second season, she was evicted by being the replacement nominee and getting put up by somebody who she thought she could trust. And it's honestly really unfortunate to see Victoria go out in this way. But honestly, I think the game that she played this season was stellar. While she was sloppy towards the end game, I think the way she was able to set up her personal connections and her bonds to really lay the groundwork for her future in this game was really impressive. She just got a bit unlucky with competition results, and she was just too big of a target to keep in the house, which is why she lands here at number 5. Now it's time to talk about the house guests that are actually still in the house. At number 4, the person I believe to be in the worst position is Lexus. And we're at a point in the game now where while it is possible to switch people's allegiances, it's highly unlikely. I mean, now we're at the final 4 and relationships are pretty much set. I mean, it would take an absolute bombshell to shift anybody's allegiances. So I really don't see anything in terms of alliances and allegiances shifting anytime soon. As it stands right now, you could honestly switch around number 4 and 3 and 2 and 1 with each other like interchangeably, and I honestly wouldn't have any qualms with it because 4 and 3 are in such similar positions and 2 and 1 are in such similar positions. So it really, in my opinion, wouldn't make a difference if you switch those like people around. But in terms of number 4 with Lexus, she only has Anthony in this game. Anthony is the only person who will not only take her to final 3, but will take her to final 2. Like, Anthony is her only route to the end. And we're seeing that Lexus just doesn't have the comp ability that some of these other people, particularly the people on the other side in Bayleigh and Todd, have. She just doesn't compare to them in terms of competitions. However, we know that she is capable of winning a competition. I mean, she beat Bayleigh for her veto win. So we know that she can at least beat them in these competitions. But now that we're really getting down to the nitty gritty of it, it's going to be really difficult for her to get to the end. She's going to have to win competitions. Unless Anthony just somehow turns into a random comp beast and just wins all of these endgame competitions, there's very little way that Lexus is going to make it to the end. Bayleigh and Todd are both obviously going to target Lexus, and neither of them are going to vote to keep her. So all in all, it seems like Lexus is just running out of runway. She's now dependent on the competition results going her way, which is very unfortunate for her, but will she be able to get out of it? We're so late in the game that I don't think she will be able to. Like I said, unless those competitions go her way, she's most likely going to be the next person evicted, which is why I have her here at number 4. At number 3, I have Todd. And you could switch Todd and Lexus around, and I really wouldn't have any qualms with it. They're both in very similar positions. The only reason I put Todd higher is because he is a much more competent physical competitor. So, and we've seen that in these endgame comps. I mean, he won the last 3 vetoes, which is highly impressive. Unless these competitions are going to be like mental, I think Todd has a solid chance of winning these endgame competitions. But in terms of his positioning, the only person who is going to take Todd to the end besides himself, is Bayleigh. And while Bayleigh is a pretty competent competitor who could take him to the end, he is still pretty reliant on competitions. He doesn't really have the social security and safety net that the top 2 players have, so that definitely does concern me. And the fact that he is so dependent on competitions at this stage in the game definitely does concern me. However, like I said before, he's a very solid competitor. He knows what he's doing, and we know that he can win competitions now consistently. So honestly, he could win his 4th power of veto in a row to keep himself safe, and then he'd be in a solid final 3 position. Still though, he would need to depend on either himself or Bayleigh winning the final HOH to put himself in the end. And even if he makes it to the end, I don't know if he would win against anybody in this finale. Even like against Lexus, I feel like he doesn't have any real chances of winning. So while Todd may make it to the end, his jury prospects aren't really looking that good. So I'm a bit concerned with Todd. Not a bit. I'm very concerned with Todd. While he may make it to the end of the game, I don't think he has any chances of winning, which definitely does concern me. But in terms of like his positioning and his likelihood of making it to the end, I think it's pretty plausible considering how well he can do in his competitions. So because of that, I have Todd here at number 3. At number 2, I have Anthony. And by Anthony being at number 2, this is the first time throughout this entire season where I haven't had a vet in the number 1 position on my power rankings. And Anthony could honestly be changed with number 1 if you really wanted to, but personally, I think that Anthony has a worse chance at making it to the final 2 than the person at number 1, so that's why I put him here at number 2. But Anthony is in a pretty solid position. He has a lot of people, and by a lot, I mean like 2 out of 3, people who will take him to the final 2 in Bayleigh and Lexus. So that definitely does give me some confidence. The only person who won't take Anthony to the end is Todd. But Todd is a very competent competitor, and he can beat Anthony in these endgame competitions. So that definitely does worry me, and that was one of the biggest contributing factors as to why I put Anthony at number 2 instead of number 1, is his comp ability and his allies' comp ability. We've seen in these endgame comps that Bayleigh and Todd are outclassing Lexus and Anthony in these endgame competitions. So Anthony is going to become a little bit reliant on the right people winning competitions. With Anthony making such a big move and looking like such a backstabber and betrayer to the eyes of the jury after they find out what Anthony did to Victoria in blindsiding her, they're definitely not going to respect his game. So the only person who Anthony could sit next to is somebody whose game they respect even less in Lexus. So Anthony needs to sit next to Lexus in the final 2 to have a pretty decent chance at winning this game. If Anthony sits next to Bayleigh, there's a very high likelihood that Bayleigh wins the game over Anthony, and Anthony becomes the Paul Abrahamian of the Big Brother Canada series in getting second place 2 times. Now, truth be told, I think Anthony does have a pretty good chance of being able to sit next to Lexus. He has been studying for these endgame comps, and we have seen that he is doing pretty well in these mental competitions, and that if he really wants to win a competition, it looks like he can. So it's honestly a pretty decent chance for him to make it to the end, and it's a pretty great position where he is currently at. However, I just worry that these endgame competitions just could not go in his favor, and that could just severely hinder his chances of making it to the end. But I still think he has a pretty good chance of making it to the end, which is why I have him here at number 2. Now at number 1, the person I believe to be in the best position in the house is, and I can't believe I'm saying this, it's Bayleigh. And if you told me in the beginning of this game that Bayleigh is not only going to be in the Final 4, but be in the best position coming into the Final 4, I would tell you that you're crazy. Because Bayleigh's prospects in the beginning of this game were tragic, to say the least. I mean, she really didn't have any sort of social capital with anyone, but now she's in this endgame position where she is primed to make it to the end. I mean, Todd is going to take her to the end. Anthony at least wants to take Bayleigh to Final 3, and Anthony might even take Bayleigh to Final 2 if Anthony's really pledging that sort of loyalty. Do I think Anthony's actually going to do that? Most likely not, because Anthony's smart enough to know that if he sits next to Bayleigh, he's most likely going to lose. So I would imagine that Anthony most likely takes the shot at Bayleigh and takes Bayleigh out at 3 if he wins Final Head of Household. But Bayleigh herself has really good chances because we're now seeing that she is killing it in terms of like her performance in these endgame competitions. We saw her win a veto, we saw her win that immunity competition, so we know that she can win competitions. It's just a matter of if she can turn on the jets in this final 11th hour. And in terms of her positioning, I think she's set up great. The only person who is not going to take Bayleigh to the end is Lexus, and Lexus doesn't really seem to have the comp ability to win those competitions to send Bayleigh home. And if Lexus wins HOH, there's no way Bayleigh goes home because Lexus is the only vote that would take out Bayleigh. So as long as Bayleigh, as long as Lexus doesn't win the veto at the Final Four and Bayleigh isn't sitting on the block come eviction night, I think Bayleigh is primed, and I mean primed, to make it to that Final Three. And then in that ideal Final Three of herself, Todd, and Anthony, I think she wins against both of them handily. And I think there's a high likelihood that both of those guys would take her to the end, which would essentially guarantee her that win. So honestly, I think Bayleigh might be emerging as the front runner to win Big Brother Canada 12. And I can't believe I'm saying this, considering like how rocky of a start she had to her game. But honestly, it's very impressive seeing how she's been able to recover. And I love Bayleigh so much for that. I think it's just so entertaining and so fun to see how she's been navigating this game and to see her in this position where she's primed to win. I think it's just great. I think it's just a great bookend to her story, and hopefully she can finish it off by winning this season for herself, which is why I have her here at number 1. Overall, the endgame portions of seasons of Big Brother typically tend to be the most boring because of how small the numbers are and how set the allegiances are. There typically isn't really any intrigue in these endgame competitions or these endgame results. However, this week of Big Brother Canada produced such insane results. I mean, Anthony turning on Victoria in this moment is definitely a move that we're going to need to see play out in its entirety to see whether or not this was the right decision for Anthony or not. So we'll see how these results end up turning out for Anthony. If Anthony doesn't win the season, this move is definitely not going to look the best in retrospect. But as it stands right now, I think it puts him in a pretty good position. And to see all of the newbies unite together against the vets, or at least the veteran in Victoria, something that they pledged to do in the beginning of this game, to see it come together in this moment is like poetic. And it's just honestly really entertaining to watch. I was not expecting this endgame to turn out as entertaining and as dynamic as it is as right now. So this is honestly just feels like a great way to end the season, to see things are still shifting, things are still changing, things are still moving and evolving. And this endgame is going to be unpredictable. While there are people who have better chances, it feels like literally anybody could somehow win the end of this game, and literally any of them could win this season. And I can't wait to watch it all unfold, in all honesty. But those are just my thoughts. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends if you have any of those, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.